This chateau once belonged to the Grand Duke of Luxembourg. It's now being turned into offices, headquarters of a company called Astra. In the grounds, another image of a changing world. Astra plans to launch a satellite in December. It will then lease channels to television companies. You, the viewer, are to be at the receiving end.
The revolution is here. The introduction of 4 new television channels.
For £80 million, Sky Television has leased 4 channels for the next 10 years. That's 4 of the 19 new satellite channels due within the next 12 months.
It's Sky again. Sky Television.
A dramatic pause.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Chief Executive of News International, Mr. Rupert Murdoch.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for taking the time out to come to our presentation today. News International has over the years...
As if his earthly media empire was not enough, Mr. Murdoch is going into space.
This commitment was also made in the belief that the advertisers, too, had been badly served by monopolistic channels with outrageous advertising rates.
Mr. Murdoch's plans are more than talk. This will be Sky Television's £25 million headquarters in London.
We're mostly going to be based, right?
Yes, the production area is there,
yeah.
But there will be a covered walkway which is going to go from there.
The head of Sky Television's 24-hour news service, an Australian like Mr. Murdoch, shows 2 new staff members around the site.
The serious poker games will be up there.
The dartboard and space invaders machine.
But maintenance will be in that building.
Since this is a Murdoch enterprise, there'll be no unions at Sky. This is whopping without the razor wire. One of the new presenters was recently poached from TVAM. Now, what about these huge salaries that are mentioned? Should the rest of us be very jealous?
Not at all. You shouldn't believe everything you read in the papers is all I can say to that one.
These 6-figure sums should not be believed?
Not at all. I'm getting the going rate for the job, that's all.
The new satellite enterprises have some powerful political backing. Last month in Luxembourg, Mrs. Thatcher came to call. The endorsement of satellite services is part of her broader assault on the television establishment. The present target is ITV, which a year ago she described as the last bastion of restrictive practices. That bastion has now crumbled somewhat and will crumble further if people can be induced to buy their own satellite dishes. In the months to come, potential subscribers are going to be persuaded to extend their viewing. Your own rooftop dish currently costs at least £500. With the new services on stream next year, manufacturers will be offering them for £200 upwards. Even then, not all the services will be free. For the better movies, you'll be paying extra. One way to tune to the future is to get cabled up if you live in the right area. Cable company subscriptions now cost between £6 and £25 a month. With the launch of Astra due in December, the satellite revolution in British television is now ready for blast-off. But there's much more to the new era in television than space stations alone. Down here on Earth, the government has radical plans to change what must now be called the terrestrial channels. There'll be at least one more commercial station, and the existing channels will be dramatically affected. It's probably the biggest shake-up since the little box in the corner became part of our everyday lives. The people most affected by the shake-up are the ITV chiefs who this week arrived to confer in a Scottish hotel. This is an annual strategy conference, but never have the omens been more unsettled. The initial pressure may be financial, but that is soon translated into what ITV viewers will see or will not see on their screens. Given the sharp need to face down the new services, there is now consensus that certain sorts of programmes are under threat, specifically those programmes which go to make up ITV's public service role.
In a highly competitive world where you're competing with other channels for the same sort of finance, there will tend to be a premium on those programmes that attract the highest audiences or that attract the highest amount of advertising revenue. And so certain types of programmes of lower interest, of minority concern, will be threatened in that environment.
What sorts of programmes might be threatened?
That the programmes that might be threatened are the regular current affairs programmes, the religious programmes, the programmes of interest to small minorities, adult education programmes, programmes of interest to particularly small sports minorities, or whatever.
Do you believe yourself that they will go?
No, I don't. I don't believe that they will go, but I haven't seen the white paper yet.
The government's plans for the future of broadcasting will be published as a white paper next month. Their effect, perhaps their purpose, will be to put the squeeze on ITV. There will be a new Channel 5 by 1993, which may cut ITV's advertising revenue. ITV is likely to lose its control over Channel 4 advertising. A new commercial television authority may demand fewer public service programmes on ITV. Finally, there will be an auction for ITV's regional franchises in 1992. It's all part, as the government sees it, of preparing ITV for the rigorous 90s. Nearest the camera in Downing Street, one of the country's most influential media consultants.
The vision of broadcasting in the 90s is one of an industry which behaves more like industries in other sectors, the industries that produce washing machines or cars or advertising services. An industry in which one has to compete to survive, one has to combine quality with low cost, in which there is a good deal of international trade. Already we're seeing much more international trade in programs at higher prices, which realistically reflect their cost of production. And the feeling is that if the old guard of British broadcasting, the ITV and the BBC, stayed essentially as they were, they would not be fit to fight in that new world. And domestically, they would lose out to the new satellite entrepreneurs, and internationally, they would lose out to other providers in that international market.
It's advertising that holds the key to commercial television's future. At Heathrow, they're shooting a new British Airways ad. British Airways welcomes the new changes in television because they say more fragmented audiences will enable them to target the class of viewer they want, the regular air traveller. In this ad, a passenger beats jet lag thanks to flying club class.
Action, Chris!
On the whole, the advertising industry can't wait for market forces to take over in television.
Mark that. There's our 3 shots. Let's go to lunch.
The wine flowed at the National Theatre earlier this month when Rupert Murdoch introduced his new television service to the advertisers.
Could you get me some? I'd like some salmon and some rice and salad stuff.
Mr. Murdoch told advertisers he would guarantee to undercut ITV in the price it cost them to reach 1,000 viewers.
It's going to make so much difference. I'm just dying to see those programme companies realise what competition actually is, because they haven't got a clue.
There's real resentment at ITV's monopoly over television advertising.
And, oh, absolutely.
But now the monopoly is doomed.
I think it gives us, as an advertising agency and working on behalf of our clients, it gives us more choice, it gives us more advertising minutage, which hopefully what that will mean is a reduction in terms of television cost. And one of the things that came out in the presentation, which I'm very interested in, is certainly the guarantee of a 25% differential against ITV. That is a major interest to myself, the agency, and my clients.
I think it's going to be up to the broadcasters to provide us with the right kinds of programmes and the right kind of audiences. That's going to be the key.
As far as ITV is concerned, they're going to have to understand that they're going to be competing for audiences in a much more genuinely competitive world, where maybe there is a soap opera against a soap opera and there's 2 or 3 movies against a movie.
Where does this then leave ITV in terms of its revenue? And the revenue, of course, goes to make programmes.
I think that it may well take money away from ITV. I think ITV should watch out.
ITV may well watch out because Rupert Murdoch rather favours advertiser power. Are the advertisers in the driving seat in the commercial television of the future?
I think yes, we're going to help them get in the driving seat. Now, as a broadcaster, a media person, I'm not sure I like that, but if we're successful, it will put the advertisers, they will be able to choose what they buy, rather than have to pile in at an expensive rate.
But as you say, as a broadcaster, you might not necessarily approve that. Is it not rather...
Well, you always like to have the upper hand in negotiations, and we may not have that.
But leaving aside the negotiations, what about the programmes and what about the position for quality programming that British television is said to stand for?
Well, of course, I don't believe it does, but that's a whole new argument. You take a programme such as I mentioned earlier, like Upstairs, Downstairs, that was British. Have a look at a program like LA Law. Fine, by any measuring stick, a quality program. You can have quality and be popular.
An explosion and smoke billowing out.
Mr. Murdoch's own quality popular programming is rather limited at present.
See what I mean, DJ?
This is the Fun Factory on Sky Channel, where the puppet characters introduce cartoons. They already have a following in Europe, where a ferocious canteen lady called Mrs. T frightens the children.
Out of my canteen in a minute, I'm going to wrap this gas stove round your neck. Get out of here!
You want to see a superstar, you want to see me.
The challenge for the new satellite stations is how to attract a decent audience in Britain with only modest programme budgets. Though set to increase in the next year, satellite channels spend on average £3,000 an hour on programmes, compared to, say, £60,000 an hour for the BBC.
How was that?
Okay.
Okay. You gonna buy that?
Away from the studio, there's a level of expenditure to which the satellite stations will never aspire. In Bordeaux, Granada Television, the ITV company in the northwest, is filming for A Tale of Two Cities. It's costing £4 million. In the jargon, a Dickens mini-series.
Keep still in the Bouget Park.
The cast includes Sir John Mills.
Mark. 863.
But if advertisers are now in control and money is short, Granada fears that there will be fewer such projects in future.
I have a great regard for advertisers. They've given us a lot of money to assist the quality of British broadcasting. But they have to be told that so far, the British broadcasting system has been designed to put the interests of the viewer first, not the advertiser. Now, the advertiser, quite understandably, is saying our turn has come and we want television to be market-led. No, it should be programme-led. Advertisers should remember that our system was introduced to inform, to educate and entertain. It wasn't to sell goods. That's the American system. There are other systems which are instruments of the state. Ours puts the interests of the viewer first, and I think we all have to remind ourselves of that, including politicians.
But what are the interests of the viewer? To test what you think, we invited a group to sample the television of the future. 24 in all checked into a London hotel, where a special range of satellite services was laid on.
Simon. Simon. And Mark. And Mark. You're in room 3040, I believe.
It was a random sample, but represented all age groups, families and single people from as far apart as Newcastle and Bristol.
One of these, please. I think it'd be quite reasonable.
We told them of the services they would receive in their rooms and asked them to record their impressions. In addition to the 4 channels we know about, they had 10 more on offer. Over a 24-hour period, the group watched television in the line of duty.
Reader's Digest article that outlined how the program had gone wrong.
Strike, as it turned out.
A typical viewer's television watching over a year would fill January and February 24 hours a day. Two-thirds of our group thought British television either good or very good, and no one thought it was less than okay.
It's hard to keep pace if you've got turkey drumsticks.
The view of the satellite services was mixed. In our survey, half our sample found the services interesting. A third thought them boring. Among the adults, half said they would consider buying a satellite dish, half said they wouldn't. The children were predictably enthusiastic, a whole day in front of the telly.
No, I'll come. What didn't you like?
The children, of course, will be the viewers of the 21st century. So I started by asking them whether they'd enjoyed the satellite channels.
Yes.
Why? Which ones did you like?
Dinosaur ones.
What are you going to tell your mum and dad when it becomes possible to have one of these little satellite dishes? Are you going to ask for one?
Yeah. Yes.
And do you think they'll buy you one? Do you think they'll buy a satellite dish if it...
No.
Tim, why are you so certain your mum and dad won't buy a satellite dish?
They probably can't afford it.
Well, I'm going to be very rude and say rubbish, because truthfully, we haven't enjoyed any of them. Just the snooker, truthfully, the sports. That's all we really liked, what we've seen this weekend while we've been here.
Well, I wasn't very impressed, really. I didn't think the standard was very high in the actual programmes, so I wasn't really tempted to keep watching much that I saw.
And so what happened yesterday evening? Did you continue doing your bit, flicking through the satellite channels, or what?
Well, I think in the end we went and bought a newspaper to see what was going to be on television, the normal channels.
Especially like the music channel.
This is the one we're showing here?
Yes, that's the one on now. For the music and also the videos as well. That was very good.
I mean, they seem to be going in for more modern, aggressive films rather than the older, happier films. Happy endings, which I'm sorry, but I would prefer for my children.
Mrs. Goldman, do you imagine that the family will be investing in a satellite dish in time to come?
Not until I can be sure that I can vet what the children are going to see. Not to have just a free-for-all of all the programmes there. You know, thinking of children and what they may be watching.
Home Video Channel advises that this film contains bad language, scenes of violence and nudity, and explicit scenes of an adult nature.
Whatever some TV people may say, we did find that sex and violence were major concerns among parents in our group. But here the government will put a brake on the free market. A new Broadcasting Standards Council may concentrate on the satellites.
We've got to have a system which, particularly during the hours when very large numbers of children are watching, reasonably protects families from pornography and extreme violence, which are the two things which we're concerned with.
If worse came to worse, in this era of international satellite television, are British standards not actually, at the end of the day, unenforceable?
No, I don't think they are. I think that, as with pirate radio, that you can take remarkably effective sanctions. In the end, people are only going to do this for money. They're going...
Talking about pornography or whatever.
Pornographers are in it for the money. They're not in it even for the love of pornography. They're not doing the public a service. They're doing the public a disservice for money. And if they can't make money out of it, and my view is that it's perfectly possible for a determined government to see that they can't make money out of it, they are, on the whole, likely to desist.
Sky Movies from Mr. Murdoch's stable may be the first to be scrutinised. But his success will have to lie in identifying more general television tastes. And the established TV companies will try to hold on to the audiences they've had for a generation. Back in the 60s, the British put the best of light entertainment, like Steptoe and Son, in the top 10. They also went for the game shows, like Beat the Clock. But in huge numbers, they also watched the tough, factual programmes. There's always been a spot at the top for Coronation Street, but in recent years the soaps have reigned supreme. EastEnders have been at the top, and they've now been joined by their Australian neighbours. Even the gritty world of the London policeman has acquired the status of soap. In the new era of television, there's pressure on ITV to secure higher ratings with fewer resources. At their Scottish hotel, the chiefs of the ITV clans gather. Strains within the system have intensified with the new external pressures on commercial television. Some in the network feel the crucial ground of public service broadcasting is being abandoned without a proper fight. The London companies stand accused of retreat, but they say that they're simply under more pressure than the rest. Certainly no one disputes the pressure.
I think if our revenue is cut down by the new competition from the skies, then certain areas will have to give, and the competition will come in peak time, whereas that's where you want to put your money, into expensive drama. And therefore there's bound to be a squeeze in other parts of the schedule, which, as I say, don't attract big audiences, whether it's religion, whether it's adult education, whether it's children's programs. I think some very good things in those areas are bound to disappear.
There's an even grimmer scenario being painted by the makers of television classics like Brideshead Revisited. Granada Television fears that ITV could simply lose the jewels in its crown unless it stands up to the government's proposals. It says that the game, the set and the match are in real danger of being thrown away.
Let us say the worst happens. The government allows a lot of channels to come in a deregulated way. They play mass material cheaper and cheaper. We will suddenly find a British industry, a British production industry of high-quality television becoming an acquisition industry. We stop making and we start buying, because buying Neighbours is cheaper than making EastEnders. Buying the Thornbirds is cheaper than making Jewel in the Crown. And because there are more and more channels, the advertising income is reduced for us all. We haven't got enough money to make the Jewels in the Crown or the Brideshead Revisited or the Game, Set and Match.
It's the entrepreneur who may call the shots in future.
For instance, Granada are currently making Tale of Two Cities. They've had Jewel in the Crown, Brideshead. That sort of programming, will that continue?
Of course, they'll do very well, but they'll find a market throughout the world. They did in that. Such a Jewel in the Crown, it was shown all over the world and people paid for it.
There's no danger that this sort of programming is going to be confined, and I got the impression that this is what you were suggesting upstairs, no, confined in future to the BBC.
No, well, I think if it's done well, there will always be an audience throughout the world for high-quality program. There will not be for self-indulgent, boring programming, which I do not include in any of the instances you just gave me.
But do you think there's too much self-indulgent, boring programming on British commercial television at present?
I'm not going to get into that just right now. I'll go and watch it tonight and tell you.
Today in Downing Street, the Cabinet finalised details of the broadcasting white paper. For the new services to succeed, rockets will still have to fly, satellites will still have to orbit, and hundreds of millions of pounds will still have to be gambled. Even then, for the future to work, you, the viewer, will still have to sit down and watch.
What else have we got?